People ask me sometimes what I think about, standing there. 8 hours on the stone, eyes forward, the tourists drifting past with their phone cameras and their children pulling at their sleeves. They want me to say nothing. That's the answer they expect, and it flatters them. The idea of a man emptied out by discipline, a piece of the architecture. I think plenty. 19 years at the Caravan Gate will do that to a man. You learn to read a crowd the way a sailor reads weather. Not the obvious signs, the black clouds and the white caps, but the subtle ones. The way a man's shoulders sit when he's decided something. The particular brightness in the eyes of someone who has rehearsed what they're about to say. He came up the gravel path on a Tuesday in October, when the light was low and pale and the tourists were thin. Expensive coat, shoes that had never touched gravel before and showed it. The small, careful steps of a man protecting a shine. He was perhaps 55, silver at the temples. The unhurried walk of someone accustomed to rooms arranging themselves around his arrival. He stopped 6 feet short of the gate and looked at me the way you look at a painting you're considering buying. "Fine morning," he said. I gave him nothing. That's not rudeness. That's the post. He smiled at the silence like it was an old joke he'd been expecting, rocked once on his heels, looked past me through the iron bars at the forecourt and the house beyond, the pale limestone, the long windows, the copper beech still holding its last red leaves. "I know this place," he said. "Grew up here, actually. My father worked the grounds. East Wing service entrance, back when there was a full household staff. Different times. I've heard versions of this. The returning child, the sentimental history. Sometimes it's genuine, and I feel the weight of it, and it changes nothing about the post. The gate is the gate. My feeling about a man's history is not a credential. I'd just like a moment on the grounds," he said. 5 minutes. I'm not asking for a tour. I looked through him, not past him, through him. There's a difference, and men like him understand it immediately even if they don't like what it means. The smile adjusted, still present, but recalibrated. He reached into his coat, inner pocket, unhurried, and produced a card. Held it at the edge of my field of vision, the way you'd offer a biscuit to a dog, carefully. As though the gesture itself might do the work. "Aldrich Fenimore," he said. "I think if you check Vecaf your administration office, you'll find I've been in correspondence with the estate manager. I have a standing relationship with several members of the Heritage Board." I didn't look at the card. He held it a moment longer, then withdrew it with the smooth efficiency of a man who has learned not to let a rebuff show. Put it back in his pocket, looked at the forecourt again. "I'm not a tourist," he said. "I want to be clear about that." The gravel shifted. A family of 4 came up the path behind him. Father, mother, 2 girls in matching coatsets, and curved around him with the instinctive politeness of people who sense a negotiation in progress. The father glanced at me. I was a landmark. He moved on. Fenimore watched them go. When he turned back, something had changed in his face. Not the surface. The surface was still composed. Still the practiced ease of a man who presents well. But underneath it, something had tightened. "I've donated to 3 restoration funds associated with this estate," he said. "The North Chapel roof, the kitchen garden wall, the archival project. He let that sit. I'm not an unknown quantity here. I'd appreciate some acknowledgement of that." The wind came in off the park, slow and cold, and moved through the iron bars and touched the back of my neck the way it always does in October. I've stood in worse. I've stood in significantly worse, in places where the wind carried things other than cold, and I was required to hold a post there too, and I held it. I held this one. His jaw tightened, just briefly, a single contraction, quickly smoothed. He stepped forward 1 step and put his right hand on the iron gate. Not a push, a claim. The gesture of a man reminding you that a gate is, after all, just metal. "I'd like you to open the gate," he said, quietly. The voice you use when you want a man to understand you are choosing restraint, and that the choice could be reversed. I looked at his hand on the gate. He held my eyes for 5 full seconds. I know because I counted. Not from nervousness. I count things. It anchors the mind during long holds. 5 seconds is a long time when no one is moving, and a small crowd has started to accumulate at the edges of the path, the way crowds do when they sense that something is being decided. Then I looked forward again. I heard him exhale. Not in defeat. Not yet. In recalculation. "I want to speak with your supervisor," he said. "There is a call button set into the stone column to my left. It is for emergencies and for exactly this. I have pressed it 4 times in 19 years. This was the 5th. I pressed it once, held it for 2 seconds. Released. Fenimore straightened his coat. He was performing composure now, which is different from having it. The crowd on the path, 7 people, then 9, had gone quiet in the particular way of people who have decided to stay and see. Mrs. Halloway came out from the side passage in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. She is the estate's administrative officer and has held that post for 11 years. She is a small woman with a brisk walk and the expression of someone who has sorted a great many things that did not want to be sorted. She came to stand beside me, slightly forward, which is where her authority lives. "Mr. Fenimore," she said. He blinked, just once involuntarily, at being named. "I'm afraid your access request was considered and declined in writing on the 14th of last month," she said. "The letter was sent to your registered business address. If you didn't receive it, that's a postal matter. But the decision stands. The estate is not open for private visits outside of public hours, regardless of donation history." She paused. "Donation history is gratefully received and does not constitute access." He opened his mouth. "I have 2 colleagues who will walk you back to the main road," she said. The 2 colleagues were already there. They had come out quietly through the same passage, while Mrs. Halloway was speaking and taken up positions at the edge of the gravel, with the relaxed, specific stillness of men who do not need to announce what they are. Fenimore looked at them, looked at Mrs. Halloway, looked at me. I was looking forward. He left the way he had come, down the gravel path between the 2 colleagues, his expensive shoes now fully committed to the gravel, the shine be damned. The small crowd parted for them. A few people watched him go. Most looked back at the gate, at the limestone, at the copper beach, at the ordinary business of the place carrying on. One of the 2 girls, in matching coats, tugged her father's sleeve and pointed at me. And the father said something I couldn't hear, and she turned back and gave me a solemn, serious look, and I held the post. 19 years. There are men who spend their lives purchasing belonging, buying into rooms, into boards, into histories that predate them. It is a coherent ambition. I understand it. I was not put at this gate to judge ambitions. I was put here to hold the line between what is open and what is not. That line does not adjust for a man's account balance. It does not soften for a childhood spent near something he couldn't enter then either. The gate is the gate. I think about that sometimes in the long hours when the light is low and the tourists are thin and the gravel settles back to quiet. What I stood in the years before this post, in places whose names I don't speak at the gate, I held those lines too. A man who has held that kind of line finds the ones here easy. Not nothing, though. Never nothing. Just easy.